Well, welcome to the next instalment of our Janome Club, brought to you by Janome Australia. I hope you're all keeping warm. It seems to be another cold front coming in at the moment, so you can stay warm, rugged up, and keep sewing. I think this is a good weather for staying at home and sewing. I think it's perfect. What else did I have to say? I wanted to say that if you are interested in having an event in a store with a Janome educator, please contact your local store and let them know that you're interested in an event, and then the store can contact us and we can arrange to get an educator to come out to do the in-store events. So let's go straight over to our foot that we're looking at today. So today our foot that we're looking at is the Stitch in the Ditch AccuFeed. Unmute. Okay, so it's the Stitch in the Ditch AccuFeed dual feed foot. So what this is the Stitch in the Ditch foot, which we did a couple of months ago. We actually did the Stitch in the Ditch foot as an accessory. But this time we're looking specifically at the dual feed AccuFeed or walking foot Stitch in the Ditch. So it's the same as the regular Stitch in the Ditch foot. I've got one here that it has the guide that runs down the centre of the foot. So it's right at centre needle position, but it has the ability then to use your dual feed foot, which is your walking foot. So for when you're actually doing your quilting or stitching, I use a lot for top stitching, so if you're making, say, a denim jacket or anything like that. And you can also get, I do have here an example of just a regular walking foot for those that don't have an AccuFeed model. And you can buy the guides, so either you can buy the foot and the guides as one, that's the convertible walking foot, or you can, if you've already got the walking foot, you can just buy the set of guides. And the guides on the walking foot just clip in and get it under there. So I've got the guide sitting in the front, and then you just clip that down, and then it's got the guide that runs down the middle there in the centre of your foot. And with the AccuFeed one, again, it's just a matter of clipping off your standard sole, and then we just slide on our, better do the right angle, do it sideways or do it this way. You've got your AccuFeed foot there. So with the twin holder of the AccuFeed, it does have the, and I've spoken about these before, it does have, they look similar to feed dogs. They're an upper feed system, and those will actually move as you are sewing, and you can grab the fabric and pull it. So especially when you are quilting or have multiple layers or tricky fabric, it does help to pull all your layers together. The accessory of the month from last month, which used the AccuFeed foot, was a set of placemats. I think there's a lime, a lemon, an orange, and a watermelon for you to sew. So they are a project that is available on our website now. And you can make something nice and festive for coming into when we start getting back outside and doing our barbecues and things like that. It has a nice picnic thing. Start making your summer projects now. Okay, so I'm just going to show another little example of when I would use this. Let me just put these all over here. So this is a quilt that is in, it is a project in, is this from the workbook? No, I think it's from the 100th book. We've got a couple of new books. For those that I'm not sure, we've got a couple of new books. We've got a Memory Craft 15,000 workbook, and we've got a CM7 workbook. They are available to purchase from your local Janome store. And then we also have now a 100th anniversary book that we've put together. It's got a little bit of information about Janome. I think Peter's just gone to get me a book. And in the beginning, it's got a bit of information, thank you, about Janome. And then, move it down here. Yeah, okay, good. So a bit of information and history about Janome, and then at the back we do have, I can find a project page, a whole heap of projects in here. There's quilts, there's zipper pouches, there's napkins, there's a selection of embroidery designs, free motion quilting projects, quilts, pillows. All of the educators from Australia have worked on this book, and that is available also to purchase from your local store. And this is one of the projects in there. And on here I have done some ditch quilting. This is just like using a jelly roll and some little 2.5 inch squares to make these little prairie points. And then I stitched in the ditch on some of these lines and then done some free motion quilting and things over this particular quilt. But this is the perfect time that you would use your stitch in the ditch foot, is that I would come along and that guide runs along your seam. Ready for camera? This guide runs along your seams. I can move the, that's good. So the guide runs along the fold of the join of your two pieces of fabric, and it allows then that stitch to be exactly in the fold, and that's called stitching in the ditch. You can also use it with the binding. If I bring over a piece of binding here, so you can use it if you're, so this binding is on my machine where I've stitched on the front, folded it to the back, and then I've run along with my stitch in the ditch foot, which stitches through, and then you get the little stitch line running through the back of that. And I'll also be showing you a little sample of putting on some binding with this foot as well. So that's that one. Okay, so let's go over to the machine. So depending on what foot you're using and what machine you have, you may need to engage your AccuFeed setting, or you, normally there's like an AccuFeed button, or you have to clip it in the back, or if it's just a walking foot. And generally with the walking feet and the AccuFeed fit, we do use the straight stitches, which is what we've got now. I've just got my standard utility straight stitch. And you do have the ability with the stitch in the ditch foot as well to move your needle position. They do have on the AccuFeed one and with your walking foot, you do have the ability to move your needle position. So when you want to use it for top stitching, that's when you would move that over. So I'm going to just keep my needle position. This is a 9mm machine, so I've got a 4.5 needle position, so that's dead in the centre. He just does rearranging the cameras so that I can get a good shot of and I've dropped all my other samples on the floor, but that's all good. Yeah, just trying to find a nice section if it's a good one here to stitch on. So just, where are you taking the camera? He's dragging the camera somewhere. I don't know which camera we're on. We're just on this one here. Okay, yeah. So with the stitch in the ditch, obviously it is better when you have pressed your seams to, if you could just pick those up from two, that'd be great. If you've pressed your seams to the side, that ditch is a little bit, because it's got like a short side and a fatter side, it tends to run down there. If you do like to press your seams open, sometimes the stitch in the ditch can give you a little bit of trouble, but yeah, just try it out on a little scrap first, and then you can get to know with your particular machine whether you do need to adjust any settings. Okay, so can we go to close up here? So I have got my seams running down here, my straight seam. I'm going to line up the centre guide of my foot, and I'm going to lower my foot down so that guide is running exactly in that little join between the two pieces of fabric. And then I am going to start my machine. Let's go medium to the speed. Oh, I've gone off my ditch. was going a bit too fast for me. So I'm just making sure my quilt is going along the ditch, the guide on the foot. Stop that and readjust. And then we would just stitch along. I'm just going to stitch to this seam and then I'm using a contrasting thread here so you can see so you can see there, this is with the contrasting thread, but it is stitched. If I sort of open that up a little bit, see how it's stitched exactly in that little fold through there. So if you had like a white or a cream thread there, that would completely disappear into the fold there. Now, the other thing that you can use this for is the top stitching. So I can then move my needle position. So I'm going to move my needle position just over, say, 1 millimetre. So that'll go down to 3.5. Do it at 4. I think 4 looks good. So this one would be if you want to top stitch. So I'll just go to another seam here. And again, I've got my guide lined up with my seam. I do need to move my needle position just over a little bit more so it's just on the edge. I'm going to a 3 and we'll try that. This is what I use a lot for my putting bindings on or top stitching down a seam, because it just will then stop there. So then you can see here that my stitch, I've just moved my needle off just a little bit either side, and you can move your needle position to whatever the width of your machine is. So the AccuFeed Flex feet fit on the 9mm. So if I take this all the way over to 0 needle position, let's get on. Sorry, my thread is just caught over here. Let's pull it out. Sorry, I'm just getting my other sample. So yeah, if you wanted to stitch like a line down either side of your seam, if I move around to this seam here, just go back to the default. It always not being done. 0, 1, stitch 1. Let's see, maybe if I, oh, okay. Okay, I'm not used to the Memory Craft 6700. I have to get used to that. I had my foot up. This one has got an extra high lift, and I had that on, and so whereas your normal needle position, now it's working for me. Okay. So I've now moved my needle position all the way over to one side, and then I can still use the guide on the foot to go along the seam, and this will do like an echo quilt either side. So I use this a lot when I'm stitching. I don't want to just stitch in the ditch, but I want to stitch either side. You cut that off, and then if I move my needle all the way over to the other side, so it's all the way over to 9 now, and I'm going to stitch. And because you're using the guide on the foot, you will get perfect parallel stitches This looks really lovely as a cross hatching across a quilt. There's good. So then I've that stitched either side of my centre line. Okay, here's my other little sample. Down there. This is some binding that I've done. So I'm going to put my needle position back to the centre, and then I'm going to just move it over to the right now. Try maybe. Sometimes you just need to line it up and see where is the best spot. So what I've done with my binding is I've stitched it on the back of the fabric, and then I'm folding it over to the front, and it's then going under my foot. I line up the guide with the folded edge of my binding. I'm moving my needle position over just so it just catches on top of my binding. Then when I sew this, I can just keep that edge of the binding along the guide of the foot, and it will do a perfect top stitch for me. There. You'll notice too I'm using my start stop button, which I don't normally do, so it's feeling a little bit unusual for me. Some people love using the start stop button. I find it a little bit harder, so I'm feeling a little bit out of sorts today, but it's all good. I'm sure I have a foot pedal literally on the table next to me. So you can see here that the stitching then is perfectly lined up with the edge, and I've caught both sides of my bind with that neat row of stitching. So really easy for doing your bindings with your stitch in the ditch foot. Now, the other thing that I like to use my stitch in the ditch for foot is for joining wadding. So I don't know if you want to maybe go back to that camera for a sec. So I have got, everyone will have lots of these sort of scraps of wadding that we have left over, or you've got a piece of wadding and you need to add just a strip onto the side. So I'm going to show you how I join my two pieces of wadding. So you would have two nice straight edges. Let's see, I've got two straight edges there. Then what I like to use is either a triple zigzag or a serpentine stitch. So on this machine, I've got stitch number 6. And what that is it's a zigzag, but it does 3 stitches across and 3 stitches the other way. And we'll stitch. And then I like to increase my width up to maybe about a 6 or so. Then what you do is you use the guide on the foot and you put your piece of wadding one at either side of the guide, and then sort of kiss them into that guide, put my foot down, and then I can start to sew. And it will do my triple zigzag and join this piece of binding with no bulk because there's no overlap. And it makes it a really nice way to join your smaller pieces, or as I said, if we buy wadding in a certain size and we've made a quilt that's just ever so slightly bigger, we need to add a strip down the side. And there is my wadding that's joined, and there's no bulk there because it's only the 2 layers butted up to each other, and that makes a really nice join in your wadding. Now, what else have we got? The other thing that one of the other educators also uses the stitch in the ditch for is for doing some pleats when you then want to stitch them in different directions. So what we'll do is we'll go back to a straight stitch. I'm going to put my needle position over to about 0. and then I'm going to stitch. I've just folded my fabric, and then I'm going to stitch. This was this particular sample I'm working on was from my when I did some pin tucks. So this particular stitch I'm going to sew now is a little bit narrower rather than the one that I just sewed. The other ones that I've sewn on the sample. But you sew your little pleats. And then, because you've now got all your little pleats on your fabric, you can then stitch them. And if we use the stitch in the ditch, I'm going to go back to centimetre position. Depending on your machine, you might have a default button, and you can just hit the default button, and you can do that on. And using your stitch in the ditch foot, that guide acts as like a little sort of bulldozer and pushes your pleats. So if I then want to make this into a decorative finish, what I'm doing is I'm using that little guide, and it's going to push down all my pleats. I'm going to stop and cut, and then we're going to come in. I've turned it around and now go the other direction. So I'll just get this started and speed down a little bit. And that little guide at the front then acts as that little sort of like pusher that pushes down all those little pleats for me. Step up a little bit now. If we do one more in the other direction. This makes it really easy that you just need to get the little pleats started, and then the foot does all the work for you. You could continue that on little panels, keep flipping the designs, and you could make some beautiful little textured sections that you might insert into a pillow, or do them on a like a shirt, down the front of the shirt, sort of placket. So I think that's all I've got for, where are we? No, we'll go back to this one. So yes, it's just a quick little Janome club for you today. And like normal, all of these accessories, if you want more information, you can either look on the website, so janome.com.au, or Melissa will be putting information in the chat, or you can contact your local dealer and they can advise the right foot for your particular model machine. And I really hope to start seeing some of you back in store when we start to get out over through the next couple of months and doing events and things like that. So yeah, please contact your local store to let them know.